Hello, everyone. This is JJ Richa with Pismo Ventures, and today I have with me Bill Carpou, and Bill is the CEO of Octane. Octane is a organization here in Orange County and has also a big footprint across all of Southern California. I will let Bill in a few minutes or a few seconds talk about that and introduce himself as well. Before we do that, I just wanted to tell you a little bit about the program today. It's about an hour. We after the introductions, we'll start with Q&A. So what I would like for everybody to do is to start asking questions as soon as possible and not wait till the end to ask questions. So whatever you have questions, I'll be screening the questions along the way. So please go ahead and ask your questions. If there's a specific question for Bill or myself that we can't get to, please feel free to email at pvinfo@pismoventures.com. Just to kind of give you an idea of what we're doing, we've been doing these live programs for a while now. The most important thing we're trying to do here is we're really trying to help entrepreneurs educate startup companies to understand how to navigate this vibrant community, this vibrant startup community, understand what it takes really to be investable, what it takes to build and grow and potentially sell a company. So most of the guests that we have are going to be thought leaders. They're going to be movers and shakers in the community that really provide a lot of value to the entrepreneurial community that we all serve. Just a very quick about Pismo Ventures. We are a venture firm and an accelerator, or maybe this new word, which is called a venture studio. So we also have a software development arm. So we can help our software development, our portfolio companies develop software. We have a big team and all the necessary individuals to help build the software. So we help businesses to build their right business. We help them. We invest resources and we invest cash into our portfolio companies. We develop software. We facilitate funding. We open doors to make sure they're really successful. We are building a fund this year. Hopefully by the end of this year we'll have that, so it starts investing in the portfolio companies. We are a true startup-friendly model for the businesses and the portfolio companies. We are a cash and equity hybrid value-based model. We engage with our portfolio companies on a month-to-month basis, no long-term contracts, and we are a true business partner and investors as well. Just before I ask Bill to introduce himself, if you have not subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do that. If you have not followed us on social media, please do that as well. Bill, how are you today?
Doing well. It's what, day 80, day 81? I've lost track here. So
I have lost track too. I think this is my 6th week or 7th week at home. I really have not left, so except for a few trips. Bill, just a short introduction. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and about Octane?
Yeah, so I've been fortunate to be the CEO of Octane since 2015, April. So it's just a bit over 5 years. Prior my career, I spent a total of 31 years between two big organizations, Xerox and IKON Office Solutions, and held a variety of positions. I mean, started as a copier salesman, and ended in doing M&A transactions for IKON, and we ultimately sold the business to Richa. And then did a bit of consulting and got into private equity and was an operating partner at the Blackstone Group until this opportunity came up in 2015. And as we were talking earlier, this has just been, this is a kind of a passion project at this point. And I've enjoyed every day of it, in the 5 years that I've been here, and the journey that Orange County really has come along in the last 5 years.
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, and if I were to look and encapsulate Octane, we call it, there's four cornerstones, and one is the original organization that was actually created in 2002 by several of the more prominent business leaders in Orange County, with the intent of it being a convening networking organization. And in that, we've grown conferences and content, thought leadership, and all of those types of things. And it's what we refer to as Octane Connect. And it's a 501c6 nonprofit. And then the second cornerstone is we have a foundation called Octane Foundation for Innovation, or OFI, and Launchpad, our accelerator, is the largest component of that. We work with between 40 and 50 companies a year in a late seed or Series A stage to help them get institutional funding. And then we've recently added certain initiatives that are somewhat philanthropic into OFI, which would be Women Leaders of Octane, a STEM Fellows initiative, a nonprofit accelerator where we've actually taken Launchpad and applied it to several nonprofits and helped them operationalize their organization. And then the more recent one is a next generation leadership where, we're assembling, I call it this isn't age dependent, but CEOs and leaders in their 35 to 45 that could become the next generation for those that really built Orange County, and at the same time pull along the 20-somethings that are graduating the universities here and helping retain them and having them build businesses here in Orange County. And then the next piece is really our Octane Enterprise Solution, which is relatively new, that provides both capital and operation infrastructure for companies to help grow. So it's kind of speed to capital and speed to revenue.
That's really great. I did not know about the nonprofit piece, which is, I think it's needed, and because nonprofits have nowhere to go. So how long has that been around?
We started it, we're on our second cohort. So Launchpad does not do cohorts. Launchpad as a whole, companies just roll through during the course of the year as they're prepared. What we decided to do with the nonprofit accelerator was actually do cohorts. So we did the first cohort the second half of last year. We're now in the second cohort, and there's 5 organizations in each one. And then we'll do a third the second half of this year. And it was made possible by a grant from Edwards Lifescience and their foundation. And the intent there was really to maximize and add greater impact to the nonprofits that are important to the community here.
That's really great. I know that Octane has created new relationships, I think, with Connect in San Diego and Lava in LA to really create a bigger footprint to help the innovation and the entrepreneurial ecosystem. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I guess it's about 2 years ago now. I was getting a little frustrated in talking to investors, generally back east, because a lot of our capital comes out of New York or Boston. And when they'd ask where Octane was, I'd say Orange County, and their perspective was, yeah, I drove through there once on my way from LA to San Diego, or off to Pelican Hill, or I've stayed at the Montage. I mean, that's, I've gone to Disneyland. And, so that was one. Two is, I think we found ourselves almost competing. And, if you look at New York, if you look at Boston, frankly, if you look at the Bay Area, there's not, and I'll use New York as an example. There's not a Manhattan ecosystem and a North Jersey ecosystem and a Rhode Island and a Westchester County. It's all interpreted as one. So with the leaders of some of the other organizations that sat in LA, we came to a conclusion that if we raised the profile of Southern California in totality, it would have a greater impact on all of us from that perspective. What we also found in that journey was that while there was a little bit of overlap, there's certain technologies that are more apt in each of those three geographies. And frankly, the Inland Empire should be pulled into this also. So, both San Bernardino and Riverside County. And so what we really found was as we started to work together, it just adds a much more high profile to Southern California, and it's more complementary and breaks down some of that Orange County versus LA versus San Diego kind of a mindset that existed.
Yeah, that's okay. So that's been around a couple of years, and
yeah. So we actually put a name to it, and it's called INSACAL, short for Innovation Network of Southern California. And so the members of it are Connect and SDVG, San Diego Venture Group. They merged maybe a little bit more than a year ago. Lava, and then we also invited in and asked the Alliance of Southern California, which is headquartered in Pasadena, to join that group. And then we've got the Irvine Chamber and a variety of others that are all part of it. So the mission there is to raise the profile of Southern California on a national and international scale versus independently each of the regions.
Okay, yeah. Just want to remind the viewers to ask questions along the way, so please do. If you could, we were talking a little bit offline, and I think there's a misconception. Maybe we could clarify it for the listeners. What is Octane mainly a life science organization?
No, it's not. It's everything we do needs to have a technology, or a life science element to it, or med tech, however you want to frame the life sciences part. So from the number of companies that we work with, we're split about 50-50. So if we see 50 companies a year, and by the way, we start with about 400 or so, but we work actually with 50 in our accelerator. Half of them are tech, half of them are med tech. Now, of course, there's convergence of technologies also that are moving back and forth. So the actual number is split 50-50. I'd say, though, that closer to 70% of the capital we help raise is on the life sciences and the med tech side, only because it takes that much more capital to bring that type of a company to commercialization. You could start a SaaS company for $1 million or maybe less. I'm not sure you can get a device or a pharma product out there for much less than 20 million.
You can't even get off the ground. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And of course, we've rebalanced that in the last 3 years or so. It was a little bit skewed to med tech, but it's a common perception people feel. As a matter of fact, I just had my board meeting last week, and we looked at it, and just the board members are split pretty much 50-50 in terms of what their background and experience is on tech or med tech.
Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. I know you provide specific services through Octane Enterprise Solution. Can you tell us what that is?
Yeah, so Octane Enterprise Solutions is still new for us. We put it together in September. We've been talking about it for, my God, a year and a half before that. We ended up hiring an individual, Paul Tobin, to be the president of that division, and we needed to create clear separation between it and the nonprofit, since Octane Enterprise Solutions is a separate LLC and is fee-based. Octane, as the nonprofit, is a majority shareholder in Octane Enterprise Solutions. And there's 4 fundamental things that Octane Enterprise Solutions provides. One is the continuation of growth capital and the access of growth capital for companies so they can continue to grow. And that would be through a private investor network, through strategic investment, or through the many venture relationships that we have, including investment banks. The second is really focusing on certain areas of operational expertise, sales and marketing, commercialization, operations, any of those things. And in those, it's not Octane providing that, it's our network and our advisors. We have over 400 advisors that are well vetted by us and have specific areas of expertise in each of these. The third really is a shared services platform. So really for back office, and enables an entrepreneur to focus on their product, focus on building their company, and not get wrapped up in accounts payable and receivable and financial closings and all kinds of things like that. And then the fourth is in access to talent, and really enabling organizations to pick and choose talent locally here and retain them here.
So you're really doing a lot of things, and you just launched it, but then the COVID-19 hit, so not much going on, I'm assuming, at this point.
Well, it's interesting. I think anything that you're providing a service, and if people aren't back in the office, you're kind of in a holding pattern. What we've seen with some companies that were raising capital, those have been put on hold also. Now, to me, that's all pent up demand. So, unlike the hospitality industry, where if you've missed nights in a hotel or flights, those are gone forever. There's a certain amount of companies that require raising capital, and I think right now there's a little bit of a game of cat and mouse that investors are trying to negotiate valuations down because of COVID, and certainly entrepreneurs are trying to keep them high. So there's a little bit of valuation juggling that's going on, and that's put at least a temporary slowdown. I don't want to say a halt, because companies are still getting funded, but it's there's a little bit of a dance that the entrepreneur and the investor are going through at this point.
No, that's very true. I don't know if you know, but I'm a member with Tecos Angels, and we've invested in, I'm gonna say, 4 or 5 companies the past couple of months. So we're continuing to do that. We have a lot in the pipeline. We also have a fund, a yearly fund, and that's really helping because some of the investors, overall portfolio is down, but because we've invested in the fund is still investing. So, but you're right. We've seen as much as 40% decrease in valuation in some of the companies we're investing in, which is really pretty big. I have a, go ahead.
Investor, not good for the entrepreneur, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, I have a question from Deborah, and I'm going to display it on the screen. She said, Bill, what are the top 3 or 4 attributes Octane looks for in a startup?
So, there's a couple, and I think I know Deb pretty well also. But from that standpoint, what we're looking for is a company to at least have progressed. So we want to see that there's a management team in place. We want to see that there's a business plan. We want to see that there's a proof of concept. And we want to see that that company has successfully raised their angel, friends and family, and maybe early seed capital from that standpoint. We're not the right place if somebody says, hey, I've got a great idea. Could you help me write a business plan and see if it'll really formulate inside of the marketplace? We're looking for those things to have already been concluded in an incubator or in some of the earlier stage organizations that help these companies. So those are kind of the 4 criteria that we look for before admitting a company into the launchpad process.
Well, they can come to us because that's what we do. We get them ready for you, I guess. So,
JJ, you're on a good point. Is that there's a whole continuation, and again, you and I were just speaking about this prior to the call right now. That I think we as organizations and leaders in this early stage company, and when I say we, I'm not talking about just Octane. It's you. It's so many other different organizations. We need to do a better job of showing entrepreneurs the resources that are available, and it's not an either or. It's utilize all of them from that standpoint, and it just depends on the cycle of where you're at in the development of your company as to who's going to provide the greatest value for you at that time.
It's very true, and like you said, and I believe that earlier before the call, talk to everybody. You can't just say, I'm just going to talk to Octane. I talk to as many people, as many investors and then you can decipher, the best information that fits your organization or your startup. It's not a competition. We're trying to really help the ecosystem here. So I think you talked also potentially about maybe creating a roadmap or a knowledge base for that. Did you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I think working with some of the other organizations, we should really, we're starting to formulate this. Okay, here's an idea, and where do ideas come from? I mean, ideas come from universities, but ideas also come from entrepreneurs and serial entrepreneurs that are doing it all over again. So it's not that every idea comes necessarily out of a university, but you've got that at the very front end of this whole thing, and then at the end of the day, you go all the way. I mean, if you're looking this as a progression, just reading it left to right, as far to the right. Good God, that sounds political now. But as far as you get on the spectrum, you're basically looking at some type of an M&A transaction. And let's face it, no organization, no entrepreneur is starting a business just to have as a lifestyle business forever. I mean, everybody's looking as to how can I monetize this? What's my M&A look like? Who could I sell it to originally? And that doesn't mean that we don't want these companies to have social impact, during the creation of them and continue on afterwards. But the majority of these entrepreneurs are capitalists, and they're looking to basically monetize their product and then hopefully move on and do it again a second time. And then you've got so much in between. So I think that's the roadmap that we want entrepreneurs to be able to look at it and say, well, okay, I'm in this area, either in the development of my product, either in the hiring of staff, or in the funding. Am I still in seed? Am I in early venture? Am I in growth venture? Am I enabled to take on debt? And plug them into the right resources that exist in the ecosystem.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the companies that we see, and I'm sure you see that as well, is they just want to raise capital, and most of the time they don't need capital. They really need to build a business, and that's really the biggest issue that I've been running into for the past 11, 12 years, is that I run into companies that are just trying to raise capital and not trying to build a business. Are you running into something like that at Octane as well?
Yes, very much so. And it's I think it's a rally cry for us as an organization, and it's something I feel very strongly about, and I'm passionate in terms of helping these organizations. This is not all about raising capital. I mean, it is, and I get it, and I understand it. But what we see frequently is an individual will spend 95% of their time over a 12 to 18 to even 24-month period raising capital. And I don't even mean a lot. I mean $3-4 million. And at the end of the day, they've built nothing. I mean, there's been no time. So, just fast forward this to 18 months, they finally complete the round, and the organization and the company is really not any further forward or advanced than it was when they first started raising. So one of the things that we really suggest and direct organizations to is help companies, help work, have organizations that know what they're doing help you. And the nominal amount that you may even pay for that is just such a small amount in the scheme of everything, because it allows you to now spend 85 or 90% of your time building your company, somebody else helping you raise the capital. You'll raise it faster, you'll have a much higher valuation, and you've got a company that's built. And it's frustrating seeing the opposite happen, and everybody's just focused on, I got to raise capital and I got to do it myself.
I just so agree with you on that. There's so much more that could be done before you raise capital to increase valuation and to basically raise capital much faster, because if you really have a business and there's some proof that the business is really, there's a demand in the marketplace, who wouldn't want to fuel it? It becomes a simple proposition to actually fuel it at a higher valuation. Makes a lot of sense. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, what we see also specifically for private investors is they want to see that the CEO is involved in developing the business. The CEO, the founder, the entrepreneur, however you want to phrase it, is involved in building the company, not just out raising capital. And that there's a there at the end of the day.
Well, that's the smart money part of it, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
all right. So we got a few questions coming through. I'm gonna put David McConnell's question on the screen. He says, in the seed stage, which entrepreneur should I send to TCA versus Octane, for example?
So do you want to answer that, or you want me to answer that?
No, you can answer that. I mean, you can answer it from the Octane standpoint. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say it depends. It depends where it is on the seed stage, and I think it's also something that both organizations, again, it's not an either or. Both can simultaneously help with that. We've had many instances where we've had a company come through the launchpad process. We've helped connect them with individuals that are going to provide that seed, but at the same time directed them back to Tech Coast Angels and that investor network. So it's another source of a platform for investors. Now, a bit of our focus is skewed more towards helping an organization with institutional funding. So I've always felt that the general company coming through Launchpad could have and may have raised some funds earlier from Tech Coast Angels, but it's not necessarily that's not necessarily the only path.
Yeah. So I mean, it's I don't know if you agree with this, but I've noticed lately that the pre-seed and the seed and the Series A is changing so much. I mean, last week someone came to me and said, I'm just raising a pre-seed of 10 million. And so I don't understand anymore what pre-seed is versus seed and it depends if it's a life science versus something else as well. But from a Tech Coast Angel standpoint, I'm just gonna be a little bit give a range. So maybe 200,000 or maybe to 100. I don't know if we've ever done that, but maybe 200 to 2 million, and 2 million is at the very top. I think the biggest one we've done was 1.5 or 1.6 million, but there's always syndications that we could do. So anything I would say beyond maybe 1.5, then you'd have to go somewhere else to be able to raise it. But you're looking more for the ones that are raising maybe 3, 4, 5 million. Is that about right, Bill?
Well, it's kind of interesting you talked about this. I'm going to come back to syndications in a moment too.
Yeah.
But I think the last numbers I saw was that 60% of the companies that we have are raising in a range of 1 to 5. Okay. And then for some reason, 5 to 10 disappears, and the other 50% are raising 10 million plus. So, which would obviously be more of the life sciences type companies.
Right.
But we do have a dichotomy of where they're raising. But if you're raising $1 million, you could go to a private investor network. If you're raising 4 or 5 million, you still generally can't. That's a different. It's a different.
Can't do it. Yeah.
And I think this aspect of syndication and co-investing and all of that is really significant and really important. And what I see and what I've experienced early on, and we, by the way, also have started a fund and are a general partner in a fund, but most funds don't want to be the sole investor, especially in the early stage. You want to spread that risk around a little bit. Now, of course, if you put $1 million into a $5 million round and this becomes the next Facebook, you say, wow, I should have taken the whole round. But that's just general human instinct is to de-risk in the early stages, and doing that by being one of several investors.
Yeah, and I think we have the same philosophy at TCA and also at Pismo Ventures. Is it's really about de-risking. I mean, that's what it's all about. How in talking about that, how do you de-risk some of the early stage companies that come to you or that are potentially part of your portfolio?
So we rely very heavily on data, and we've got a set of predictive analytics, and there's a bit of a human element in that. But if you looked at Octane and said, "What's your IP?" and I always want to value our employees, our input, because our employees are our greatest asset. But if you were to look at something that was really IP oriented, it'd be the data that we've collected really since late 2009. So what we have the ability to do in terms of de-risking is, as we run a company through the process, and let me just start with the fact that we generally will see 400 companies that get us to that 40 or 50 that we work with each year. So
Yeah.
they just seem to bet in almost 50% increments. The 400 goes to 200, because they're just way too early or they're not in the right industry. The 200 goes to 100 when we've looked at business plans. The 100 goes to 50 when we've really talked to them and understood them. And it doesn't mean those other 50 aren't good. They're just not as good as these. And we've only got the capacity to work with so many. But at the end of the day, when a company comes out, it's got predictive analytics ranking them in deciles in 33 different categories compared to companies that have been funded, never got funded, and actually have had a liquidity event. So when we look at that and we look at the data, you take that emotional aspect out of early stage investing, and at least you could point to some data that serves the purpose of some early diligence.
Yeah. Okay, a bunch of questions coming through. So let me, I have a question from, this is from Jerry. So Jerry says, you mentioned you have 400 experts helping companies in areas like sales and marketing operations. Are you looking to add more experts? If so, how does someone get considered for that role?
So what we've done is we've utilized organizations that have been part of the network and we've had experience with. If you're interested, Jerry, you can reach out. You can reach out to me directly, and I'll just refer you to our OES group, and my address is bill@octaneoc.org. So we're looking for people that have performed and have expertise in that group. At the same time, we're trying to keep each of the functions small. I mean, if we had 50 different individuals that could provide a service, no one would get any business and no one would be happy. So we kind of restricted it to about 4. We don't want there to be 1 or 2, because then you have no choice. But you start to get above 4, then it gets out of control. And what we want is there to be the right chemistry between the advisor and the entrepreneur.
All right. I have a question from Anthony Glenn. You referenced wanting to see a business plan. That's a widely defined resource, from a 30-page document to a 12-slide PowerPoint presentation pitch deck. Can you clarify what that means?
Yeah. So, our process inside of Launchpad is going to be to help the company and the entrepreneur build an investor presentation and build an investor deck. So when we say a business plan, we just want there fundamentally to be the general tenets of the process. What's the use of funds going to be? What are you building towards long term? What does the market look like? So it's not the extensiveness in terms of how many pages it is, whether it's 12 or it's 30. It's just that it's well thought out, and it constructs a future for the company as to where they're going, and an ability to really capture market and grow and generate revenue.
Very interesting. I agree with you. Sometimes I see people saying, "Oh, I have my 50-page plan." And you know what? No one has the time to read a 50-page plan. It's really the essence of what you have. If you could do it in 3 pages, way better. If you could do it in, 10 slides, even better. As long as you have what it takes to do that. I have a question from Terry, and Terry said, "Is there a list of these capital raises you can share?" 1. 2 is any intel or device for applying to your nonprofit program. And then my startup is Voting Smarter. Will be applying for the next cohort.
Yes. So let me take the second one first. In terms of applying, we've really made it easy at this point. You can go on our website, you can go to the Launchpad section, and it actually has a place for you to apply. It probably takes 5 minutes, if that. And
that's for the nonprofit portion, right?
Yeah, that's for the nonprofit, which, by the way, I should also tell you is pro bono. So we do not charge an organization for coming through the pro bono. That's why we vet it so rigorously, and we're limited in terms of the number of companies that we could take on that. But it's all online. Somebody will get back to you within 2 to 3 days, and at that point, if there's interest, if it's aligned to what we're doing, ask for further information. We'll ask for your investor presentation at that time. We'll ask for your business plan, and that starts the process. As far as sharing the capital raisers, we don't do that until you come through the program. The program's pro bono, as I said, but we have a high degree of credibility. Over 80% of the companies that come through our process receive funding, and if we just opened the door and made introductions, we'd lose that credibility to investors. So, we don't make an introduction of a company unless it's got the predictive analytics that we really believe in, that individual can take to that investor. And we could speak to the investor on fact-based data and say, hey, this is a good company because of X, Y, and Z.
All right, here's a question from Hi5 Career Coaching. As a VC, what have you found trips up founders and leadership teams the most, or what concerns you the most when you're ready to invest in them?
Okay, trips up. I was getting tripped up on the wording here.
Me too. I got tripped up when I read it.
I think it's probably not a clear vision in terms of where they're going. It's more of a fad or a trend versus really a business. So we really look at how big the total addressable market is. But I think the biggest is the coachability of the CEO, the founder, or the management team. Since we're offering this pro bono, I mean, it's just, it ends up, and I hate to say it this way, but it ends up being a waste of our time if we're going to take a resource that we're not charging for, have somebody come through it, yep us, but not put anything to work. So, one of the criteria that JC and his team look at is the perceived coachability of the entrepreneur and the ability to take direction and feel reasonably comfortable that the recommendations that we offer will be implemented or at least listened to.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's see. You give out your email address, so is it okay if I type it in the comments section here?
Bill@octaneoc.org.
Okay, I'm typing that.
I probably should use somebody else's, but anyway. Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. Let's what is expected, or what are the expected results, if you want, a company can achieve when they work with Octane?
Well, you're asking a question that is interesting because it depends who you are, and the piece that we continue to try and clarify in our brand is Octane means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So if you've gotten involved in us and you come to conferences, you may think that we're an event planner or a conference from that standpoint. If you come to us and you've gone through Launchpad and you raised capital, you think of us as an investor, a VC, even though it may not have been our money, but being able to do that. So if you're a big company, you're there because you're trying to brand and you're trying to find investment. If you're smaller, you may be trying to find a career change. So, it really ends up being that we've got so many different entry points for individuals. We try and really understand who it is that we're talking about or to, because very few people will be able to apply everything it is that we do. We certainly want people to apply a whole lot more than just one and multiple, and maybe it'll take time for them to actually go through everything. But it's really, it really ends up selecting what the interest level is and what we could provide for that.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. What about maybe we could talk a little bit about this pandemic and how it affected Octane, because Octane has a lot of information, a lot of content, big footprint. What has the recent pandemic taught you about content and how it's distributed?
I think, like people say, any crisis is an opportunity to build something greater and better. And that's really where we're going to come down to on this. What we found early on, and I think like any other organization, is we worked remote. We found we could function pretty well and be highly working remotely as a group. But the period from March to April was kind of crisis management. And, we do our revenue model, over 50% of our revenue comes from conferences, and our conferences have been in person. What we started to find as we talked to people was that we have and hold rich content. We have it, it's ourselves, it's content that we own, or it's content that many of our partners and our sponsors have that we have access to. So I think, and not to overuse the term, but I think a pivot here, or not I think, a pivot that we are making is to be viewed and view ourselves as more of a content provider. I would tell you that the challenge we'd had is we've always been a content provider. The but in it is our distribution of that content has been one-dimensional. It's been come to an event, be there in person, sit there and listen to it, and that's it.
Yeah.
And by the way, if you missed it, sorry, you're not going to see it again until the next time that we have an event on that particular topic. So we view this as an opportunity to enrich our content, distribute it on demand, and enable people to see what they want when they want to see it. And what I mean by that is we do about 35 different programs a year. And those generally run 90 minutes. They're done in the morning. They're very topical on something specific. And we've always done them in person. And those are 35 to 50 people. There's not a lot of people at that. But the logistical challenges in putting those together are significant. So we started doing those virtually over the last couple of weeks, and we're getting 3 times the audience. So now, I'm saying, why would we ever go back and do it in person? It's easier, it's simpler, and it's drawing a greater crowd. Now, moving to our signature events is a different story. We're 400 to 800 people in those events. And we fully realize to get people back, we've got to create a safe environment. We've got to use proper social distancing, and at least initially. And there'll be protocols that'll be in place forever. So we've got a set of safety protocols that start from even testing to any number of features that will keep people safe at the events. But the way we're looking at this today is to say, we're going to offer virtual as an opportunity. And we may have to pivot, do an entire big event virtually later in the year. But we're going to offer virtual in them. And what we want to be able to do is library and record those sessions that people then, again, on demand can come in and say, hey, I missed the Octane event, or I couldn't fly from the East Coast. I really wanted to see these 2 panels, and I'll watch them. I'll either stream in live or I'll just watch them at my own, on my own time, whatever is convenient to us. So that is going to end up being probably the biggest change or pivot that we come out of the pandemic with, is better content, more on-demand content, and content that's available not just locally, but nationally, and frankly, globally, from that perspective.
It's, changes like this are happening across all industries and across multiple platforms. It's going to happen. I mean, there's no doubt. People figured out new ways of doing things because of the social distancing. So I think that's great, because now you can allow people to, if they miss something, they can go back and see it, and it's there, and it's I think it's very valuable.
Yeah, we know that our first event that we have coming up is August 7th. It's ophthalmology, and we'll be making a decision in the next week here as to whether we do this as a hybrid or whether we just do it completely virtual.
Yeah.
And we're still in the camp of doing it a hybrid, because what we hear is people want to get back to being around people, but in a safe environment. We're not wired to be on our own. And the data that we've got, we've looked at this. 20% are going to come to the conference regardless. They're just going to come. They're mavericks. They don't care. 20 to 30% aren't going to come regardless of what we put in place. And then you've got a big number that's in the middle that just wants to see what are the circumstances on that day, what are the safety protocols that you're taking, how good will the content be. So we're managing through those things as best we can, and reaching out to our sponsors, our partners, attendees, and deciding what the best course of action is going to be between here and the end of the year. But we will deliver the content that we've promised in one fashion or another.
All right, so that was going to be my next question. When is the next conference, and what are you going to do? So I guess we'll have to wait before final decision on that one. What are the key imperative that an ecosystem needs in order to thrive?
Well, it needs ideas. And so, ideas come from entrepreneurs, ideas come from universities, but it needs a solid ecosystem from that standpoint. And that's number one. Number two, it needs a center of gravity, and that doesn't mean there's one center of gravity. So, it could be the Cove. It could be, we'll be moving to the Great Park with 5 Point, and the work that's being done there by 5 Point is just exceptional. I mean, there could be multiple centers of gravity, but there's got to be places people could go. Capital goes without saying, and we just simply do not have enough capital here in Orange County, frankly, in Southern California, and there's more that's occurring, and we have the ability to go out and find it. But you've got to go out and find it. And I mentioned earlier, a lot of our capital comes from New York and Boston. And unfortunately, 2019 was a record year for raising capital for companies, over almost $350 million, and only 3% of it came from Southern California. And
wow,
that's tragic at the end of the day. But I will say that if you're a good company, if you're worthy of getting capital, you could get capital. It's just you got to get out of the box of trying. You'll bang your head against the wall if you're trying to raise capital in Orange County. You need infrastructures. You need incubators, accelerators. You need community, and you need community backing it up. And this again is one that I'm passionate about. Comparable to other ecosystems, we still have too many larger organizations that in Seattle, in the Bay Area, in Boston, in New York are all in. And they're sitting on the sidelines here waiting for something to happen. And it's not going to happen as fast or as explosive as it could have without those organizations and individuals joining. So those are really the imperatives.
Yeah. So maybe, it's a good segue to maybe talk a little bit about visionary ventures, and maybe you could provide maybe a little bit of information about it, maybe an update, and what's the fund? Are there new funds? How much is in the fund, and what kind of investments?
Yeah, so I mean, Visionary has been one of the top performing funds. It's been a top decile fund since it was put in place, and the fund started in 2015 at an Octane board meeting. The Octane board said, let's look at doing a fund, and we started thinking about general funds, and when we really put a lot of thought into it, we said, let's do something where there's really a high level of expertise here in Orange County, and that's ophthalmology. So Visionary One was formed. It was formed to make investments solely in ophthalmic companies, a bit of a later stage. I mean, one of the criteria is, can you see an exit in 18 months? So the fund was formed in 2015. We began bringing LPs in. I'm not quite certain whether our first investment was later in 2015. I think it was. And then in early 2016, we brought in a professional fund manager, Jeff Weinoff. I've known him personally. He's just done a tremendous job in managing the fund day to day. And let me pause for a second. Visionary is a separate LLC. Jeff is the managing partner. Octane is a general partner in the fund. Okay, so operationally, the responsibility is Jeff and his team on the day-to-day activities. The fund made 9 investments, had 2 liquidity events in December of 2018, has produced top-tier results, and is fully invested. So earlier this year, we began the raise of Visionary 2, and Visionary 2 is already, I'd say, 3 times the size of Visionary 1. Has not done a final close yet, so it's still open to new investors. Has attracted a bit of institutional money, which is a good sign, and has expanded from ophthalmology to ophthalmology and medical aesthetics. If you kind of follow what the process of the fund has been, is the LPs, a lot of whom are doctors and physicians, they bubble up deal flow. Then Launchpad is utilized as a vetting mechanism. Discussions are in place with a lot of the strategics in those industries that'll be the acquirers. And then you've got a 5-person investment committee that makes a decision, and an investment is made. And, we found that there is, with any of these investments, if you have a co-invest opportunity, a lot of your LPs like to jump in and put additional capital than what their pro rata investment would be, in terms of what they put into the fund. So we view this as really helpful to Orange County, helpful to Octane and the community, and an opportunity to build on Visionary 3 and 4 down the road. And we're looking at some other funds ourselves from an Octane perspective that probably will be more tech oriented and not necessarily fit the Visionary model.
Okay, so I guess ophthalmology and aesthetics, are there other areas that potentially you're going to expand to, maybe either in the life science area or maybe technology in general, or are you concentrating on more the medical aesthetics and ophthalmology?
Well, on the medical side, most of what we do is device for pharma, and then obviously healthcare IT. And then if you look at industries, and I think this is where we've gotten a bit more granular. Yes, it's ophthalmology. Yes, it's medical aesthetics, but it's really also cardio, neuro, and dental. Those five industries from a vertical perspective have a big footprint in Orange County and Southern California. If you go to the tech side, we're looking at fintech, cyber, data analytics, esports. I mean, those are industries, again, that are prevalent here. Now, people will say, well, what about AI? AI is not an industry. AI cuts horizontally across everything. So
yeah, exactly. It's not an industry.
Yeah, we'll be announcing, I think, relatively shortly, some initiatives and focus on really helping build and grow Orange County as an AI supercenter. And what I mean by that is, in collaboration with a variety of other organizations, how could we really take AI that's thriving here in Orange County and just elevate it on more of a national and an international stage? And AI's in, I mean, AI's in ophthalmology, it's in medical aesthetics, it's in cardio, it's in cyber, obviously. It's in everything. And we've got a good, strong AI background in terms of entrepreneurs, individuals that are doing it. And, we're fortunate that it looks like we're drawing a worldwide AI conference here later in 2021. It was supposed to be in September of this year and has been postponed because of COVID.
Oh, that's interesting. I think I did not know very specifically that AI is thriving here. What about? We'll talk just quickly. We're coming up on 5 minutes before the end of the program. What about blockchain? Have you been seeing a lot of that lately?
We have, and I think JC would be better on our team to probably
talk about that.
Okay. in terms of everything that he sees. I mean, blockchain is still prevalent. It's just, I gave you the ones that seem to be more. And I was hearing a lot more about blockchain a year or 18 months ago than
Oh, yeah, you're right about that.
Yeah. And I don't know whether that's good or bad or the reason for it, honestly.
Well, it was not just blockchain. It was more the currency, right? It was 18 months, 2 years ago. It was a huge.
Everything
everybody was talking about that,
and all of that, right?
Yeah, and the ICOs, yeah. All right, so we got a couple minutes left. So I'm gonna do some closing stuff, but I'm gonna ask you while I'm doing that if you can think of only one recommendation that you can recommend to entrepreneurs, to startups, as to what to do. So I'll come back to you for that. I'll give you a little time to think about it, and while I'm doing the closing. So, thank you everyone for coming in today. I wanted to make sure that you're getting valuable information here. Bill's been great. He told us a lot of information about Octane and the ecosystem that he's trying to build along with Pismo Ventures and many other organizations here in Orange County and Southern California. Please follow us on YouTube and on social media. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. This program is being recorded and it will be available within about 24 hours. So by tomorrow morning, if you want to listen to it again or you want to share it with anyone. Just a couple of things on the upcoming programs. We have a marketing webinar, a free webinar this Thursday. It's at 11 a.m. So if you'd like to join us, again, it's free. Just go to Eventbrite and find look for Pismo Ventures, and you'll be able to do that. Next week we have Richard Sudek from the Cove. He's going to talk about the Cove and how the Cove contributes to the entrepreneurial ecosystem. Week after that, we have a VC, Jeff Bocan. So please make sure you join in. You can always go to Eventbrite and find all the different programs that are coming up. Bill, what's your recommendation?
So I'm going to tell you two things, and one fits into just what you talked about on your next guests is use the ecosystem that you've got out there. So, people will often say, should I use Octane or should I use the Cove or whatever? The answer is use both. Use everything that's available to you. And what you'll hear from Richard next week, there's a continuum and a structure. Jeff at Okapi, he looks at a lot of deals that come out of Octane. So all of this is tied together, and look at it that way versus competitive. I think the other thing is listen and take criticism, and don't be defensive. Your idea, while it's important, people are going to give you critical feedback. And if you can't pivot and you can't have thick skin and take that criticism, you're probably not going to make it.
That's a great advice, and I think that's there is this fine line, Bill, right, between someone knowing what they want and being pushing for what they want to do, but at the same time still listen and pivot as needed. So fine line between arrogance
Yeah.
and really being able to listen and learn and pivot. So great advice, and I think we hear this all the time, and I do believe that listening and learning and trying to pivot while being somewhat stubborn to move forward with your plan is a good combination. Bill, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, JJ, thanks very much for having me. Happy Memorial Day, okay?
Happy Memorial Day. Thank you, everyone. We will see you next week. Thanks, Bill.